NFC Championship game rematch. San Francisco 49ers at the Philadelphia Eagles. I will not be able to watch this game because it's on at 4:30 on Fox, which is also when the Browns Rams game is being happening. So unfortunately, as much as I would love to watch this game, they're not showing it here in Cleveland.
Just like with the Browns and Broncos last week, my two TV setup will be in full force. I'll have the Browns on one TV, I'll have the Birds on another TV, and I'm going to be upfront about this game because you know how much I hate those stinking Niners. If there's one thing Eagles and Cowboys fans can agree on, it's F the San Francisco 49ers.
I'm with you
Now,
there. I'm with you
up,
there.
up front, I'll say this. I think Philly is coming into this game motivated because this is the worst line of a spread I've ever seen. I have no idea how San Francisco is favored by 2.5 in this game. But I do think the Niners have a little bit of an advantage in two ways, and one of them is an off the field advantage. The first one is San Francisco's coming off 10 days rest against Seattle, and Philly's coming off a 5-quarter game against Buffalo, where it took overtime to beat the Bills after Josh Allen played one of the best games he's played since that Kansas City Chiefs wild 2021 playoff game. That looked like the old Josh Allen, and that looked like the old Bills last Sunday. The other aspect of this, I don't know if you remember this from last year, but Nick Sirianni, the Philadelphia Eagles head coach, is very close friends with a guy who just got fired in Carolina named Frank Reich. Nick Sirianni is a very emotional guy. And we saw it in Kansas City. We saw it last year, the Eagles' first couple games after Frank got fired in Indianapolis. Sometimes it takes Sirianni a half to focus. I'm not even joking about this. Sirianni gets way too emotional, and sometimes the game plan doesn't come to him until the second half, and Philly will make adjustments. I think that this game is personal. Deebo Samuel called James Bradbury trash. That did not go over well in the Philadelphia Eagles locker room.
Wait, did you hear what Hassan Reddick was saying about the 49ers whining and complaining? You heard about that, right?
They need to come to our field and prove it. And, both of these teams don't like each other. This is a real rivalry in the NFL. The difference in this game will be the Eagles' defensive line against the weaker San Francisco offensive line. Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis will be the difference. Jalen Hurts will make a couple more plays than Brock Purdy will. Jalen Hurts will all but wrap up the NFL MVP conversation when he has another sensational second half. And the Philadelphia Eagles will win this game 24-21 in a bloodbath that will once again make my heart race.
This game is huge because if Philly wins, they all but wrap up the number one seed in the NFC, meaning that if you want to get to the Super Bowl, you got to go through Lincoln Financial Field. However, if San Francisco wins, then that puts all the pressure on Philadelphia because next week they have to go to Dallas and play the Cowboys. If the Eagles lose this week, not only does that put the number one seed in question, it puts the NFC East in question because Dallas could come back and win that division.
I'm telling you right now, Dallas is not winning the division. I don't care if we lose both of these games back to back. We're about to get into Dallas's schedule. Their schedule the next 5 games is harder than our back half. Even if we tie, even if we lose these next 2 games, Dallas will lose a game or 2 down the line. Philly will have at least a 1-game advantage over Dallas at the end of the regular season. I pretty much can guarantee you that. As you mentioned, this game to me is more important for San Francisco actually than it is for Philly because Philly can still lose and get the number 1 seed. If San Francisco loses, the number 1 seed is pretty much wrapped up. It's barring a miracle, it's going to Philly. There is a thought in my head where it's like, I don't want to clinch the number 1 seed too early. Sometimes Russ can lead over rest, but this is San Francisco. We don't give a damn. The Niners have made things personal. They think they're so good. And I've been telling you this for 13 weeks. You put pressure on Brock Purdy, he is not the same quarterback. I think what could be a huge deciding factor in this game is two things. Number one, by all reports, Dallas Goddard is trying to come back and play in this game. It was originally not supposed to play in this game, but he's going to try to play, which will open up the passing game if he's able to go. It's 50-50 right now. The other thing is, Lane Johnson was severely missed, especially in that first half against Buffalo. He woke up the Sunday of the Bills game feeling not right in his groin. There's no structural damage. It was just, sore, bruised. He wanted to play it safe. He was a limited participant in practice today, but all signs say he is going to play on Sunday. That will be the difference, especially when you have Chase Young and Nick Bosa now on the same side for San Francisco. And don't forget, this is the third time this year the Eagles will have to go up against Chase Young.
Yes. So let me ask you this. The Eagles have been in a lot of close games lately.
Yes, they have.
They were in an overtime game last week against Buffalo. You talked about it. They were in a really close game against Kansas City. They were in a close game against Dallas. You get my point. Do you think that them being in all of these close games will catch up to them at some point?
In the regular season, potentially. Listen, as much as a fan I am, as much as I'm going to pick them to win every game, they probably will lose to Dallas, maybe in Dallas. I already had them automatically taking an L in Seattle because I already told you we can never win in Seattle to save my life. If we win in Seattle, I'll drop to my knees and I'll pray to God because Seattle is our house of horrors. I don't care what team we've had. I don't care if we're 12-2 and Seattle's 2-10. Seattle just finds a way to beat us. I can't recall the last time we beat the Seahawks. They are our kryptonite. Oh, like Denver for a lot of these years been the Browns' kryptonite, as I told you when we did the show last Tuesday. But in the postseason, when you have gone through Kansas City and you've won close games, when you've gone against Buffalo, you win a close game. When you go against Dallas, you win a close game. That shows you, and this team now, in my opinion, believes they can win no matter what deficit they are in. That will prove vital in the postseason, especially if they have to go against San Francisco, who I am assuming will be back in Philadelphia for the NFC Championship game. Because I just think those are the two best teams in the NFC. I've said it all year. If Dallas somehow were to beat San Francisco in the second round, because by the way, I think that's where we're probably heading as well. We'll see. But I do think that in the regular season could have cost them a game, yeah. But I think playoff time, it's showing that, hey, we know how to win any way means possible. Last thing I'll say is, can anybody say Shaq Leonard? Because I think that by this time next week, Shaq Leonard will not be a Dallas Cowboy because he has a relationship with Nick Sirianni from his days back with the Colts. And I think the Eagles, now that Zach Cunningham has gone down with an injury, Nakobe Dean has gone down to an injury, I would love to add Shaq Leonard to this football team for himself to get a chance at a Super Bowl ring.
Okay, before we move on to talking about the rest of Week 13, I briefly want to talk about that Shaq Leonard stuff. I don't get this. The Colts released him. He's in the stadium, like the following game or whatever, as a fan, and he gets a tribute video and like a whole standing ovation. It makes no freaking sense.
Okay, I did not see that he was in the stadium as a fan. I have to admit that.
I think he was in like a loge or something, but regardless, it didn't make any sense. Like, you could have just kept him on the team.
From what I've heard, his playing time is diminished. He's barely played this year.
I don't know that for sure, but still, like that whole situation just did not make sense. But the one final thing I want to say about this Eagles-Niners game is Philly, while the pressure is on San Francisco to win this game, I think the Eagles need to win this game, if that makes sense. And the reason I'm saying that is because you want to get the NFC Championship game
Oh
in
yes. No, I
Philadelphia.
no, I completely agree with you, but I also believe this. If the Eagles were to lose this game, they will still get the number one seed in the NFC because I don't think San Francisco is going to go undefeated the rest of the way, which would be essentially what they would have to do. Philly would have to lose, at least one more game, which again is possible, but I don't think San Francisco is going to go undefeated with their schedule the rest of the way. And you have, I think, actually, the bigger threat to the number one seed in the NFC is the team that's not involved in this game, and that's Detroit. Even though they lost to Green Bay,
Good
their
transition
schedule,
there.
their schedule sets up really well for down the stretch. And as you mentioned, we're going to get to Green Bay. Before we get there, though, we got to talk about the other Week 13 NFL games. As always, I'll go first. I'll be honest. There's not a ton of games that really piqued my interest this week. I know you probably have Chiefs Packers on your list. I got Kansas City easily winning that game. We'll talk about Green Bay. They may make the playoffs, but I think the NFC is so weak at the bottom, it really doesn't make a difference if they do or don't. Kansas City is going to bounce back. I think they win the game. I only have 3 other games on my list this week. One of them is obviously the Thursday night game taking place between the Seahawks and the Cowboys. I'm very fascinated in that.
Seattle, you are proving me wrong every single week now.
Again,
What the hell?
Yeah, they're probably going to get blown out, but we'll see if Seattle can bounce back. I have Lions at Saints because I want to see how Detroit bounces back from that loss. Jared Goff in a dome. He will be comfortable. And the Saints, do you know the last 3 people to throw touchdown passes for the Saints? I'll give you a hint. It's not Derek Carr. 2 were thrown by Jameis Winston, and 1 was thrown by Taysom Hill. The Saints are not scoring touchdowns. They're kicking field goals. Their offense is bad, and I hate to say it because I want to shake Arthur Smith every time I watch the Falcons. But I think the Falcons are the best team in that division. Oh my God, help us all! And then the last game on my list, the LA Rams. They're starting to gain some momentum. They're starting to look good. They're starting to look like a playoff team somehow in the NFC, and they are going up against Mr. I'm running the ball down Denver's throat. Let me call a reverse jet sweep that the fumbled the ball. How can I ask you this? We're going off topic because I need to ask you one question before I get to your games. There are fans in Cleveland that think Kevin Stefanski deserves Coach of the Year. And I'm sitting here saying, I would get him next week if I got the chance.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't get to fully watch that game because I had to get to Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse to work the Cavs game that night. But and I refused to go back and watch that game. But I did see the highlights. What was the play calling? Like, overall, what the hell was the play calling in that game? I don't know.
By the way, it sounds like we're gonna get to see Joe Flacco start on Sunday.
Yay!
He hasn't been able to move for 3 years. Is he still gonna be able to run those bootleg Stefanski wife? Maybe we'll have to call 10 tight end screens instead of 4.
Dude, I honestly, looking at the Browns' schedule the rest of the way, I think they're only going to win 2 or 3 more games.
Like we all thought remember we had this debate 2 weeks ago? We both looked at the Browns schedule. We said, oh, that's a playoff team. I'm sorry. I'm looking at their schedule now saying, wait a minute. This may not be a playoff team.
Yeah. I mean, they've completely fluked their way to 7-4. But look at their schedule the rest of the way. Rams this week, I say that's a loss.
Probably.
Next week, home against Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I mean, if they had a quarterback, I told you, I thought that was a win. Now I don't think it's a win anymore.
Yeah. Week 15 against the Chicago Bears.
That should be a win.
That's a win. Week 16 at the Houston Texans. That's a
I think it's a
loss.
loss. I think it's a loss.
Week 17, Thursday night football against the Jets. I think we'll win that game.
I agree.
And then week 18 at the Cincinnati Bengals. Neither team is going to be playing for anything, so the Browns will.
I think that's a win. I think that gets you to 10 wins, which may get you in. It's going to be really close. It may get you in the AFC.
Yeah, but um, getting back to the question at hand, what other great games are there in week 13? I'm surprised you didn't have this game on your list. Denver Broncos at the Houston Texans.
See, to me, because Denver to me is not very good. I don't care if they won 6 in a row. They don't throw the ball down the field. They don't score a lot of touchdowns. The Browns were whipping their ass in the run game until they decided to call jet sweeps. Like, I think this should be like a 4 or 5 point favorite. And I banged on Houston a lot over the last couple of weeks with you. I think they're the better team. I don't think Denver can keep up in a shootout with Houston.
Right now, Houston is a 3.5 point favorite.
Yeah, and I took them this week in Brandon's best bets because I'm like, listen, at very worst, they may lose by a half a point. They may beat Denver by 3 at the very worst. But Denver's winning a lot of these games because they're forcing turnovers. The only way is going to be if Vance Joseph's defense can force CJ Stroud into mistakes, which, by the way, he has been prone to do over the last couple of weeks.
Yes. So I have Broncos Texans. I agree with you about Lions Saints. I have no idea what the Saints are offensively. I think this might be Dennis Allen's last year as the New Orleans Saints head coach.
Shouldn't even have been the head coach this year. The Saints need to blow it up. I'm sorry, Saints fans. Get realistic. If you want to be good for the next decade, take a year off.
I actually do not have Chiefs Packers on my list because I have no idea why that game is on Sunday Night Football. It's not interesting to me at all, even though we'll get to Green Bay and whether they can make the playoffs or not. I'll tell you a sneaky good game, actually. The Tennessee Titans somehow, someway, keep winning at home at Nissan Stadium in Nashville. They are hosting the Indianapolis Colts this week.
The Colts. Yeah, I mean, there's some intrigue there because I like the Colts. I think they're the better team. Will Levis is not it for me. He has not shown flashes for me besides, maybe the first time he came in. They barely beat Carolina, who then had to go out and fire their coach. What a freaking disaster that team is. By the way, I'm still not giving up on Bryce Young because he has better stats this year than Trevor Lawrence did his rookie year. No, nobody realizes that.
Wait, okay. Let's forget the rest of the Week 13 games. I want to talk about this. All right? Let's just stick with this for a few minutes.
Go ahead. We got 3 minutes on the clock, so just roll.
Okay, I'm going rogue on this. Did you hear David Tepper's press conference comments? He's like, we thought we could get to 2 because we thought Houston would take Bryce Young and we would take CJ. Did you hear all that stuff?
Yeah, I heard it. And listen, everybody in Carolina, the building all knew that Tepper wanted Bryce Young. Now, I do think that everybody was in agreement. I think people did like Bryce Young. I think there was some concern about CJ Stroud coming out because of the poor testing he did. Now, again, does CJ Stroud look like the better quarterback right now? Yes. I don't know what the hell is going on in Carolina. But I'll say this. I think Frank Reich is a very smart head coach that will find his way somewhere, maybe not as a head coach again, but as an offensive coordinator. You know the guy I want to see Carolina go out and get?
Ben Johnson, the Lions.
Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator. I think it would be perfect for Bryce Young. I think you can get him back in that scheme. I think Carolina this offseason, their defense is good. Screw the defense. Don't draft anybody on the defense side of the ball until wait in the draft. Use your money in free agency. Rebuild your offensive line. Spend money on some wide receivers like Jacksonville did with Kirk and Ingram and all those guys before they got Ridley just for Trevor Lawrence. rebuild your offensive line, get the kids some weapons, and then let's make an assessment on Bryce Young. That's all I'm saying here. I'm not giving up on the kid who, to me, is a very good quarterback because every time I watch Carolina, I turn them on a little bit, against Tennessee. I'm saying this is the Titans. And I mean, Josh, by the time he drops back in the shotgun, he is almost on the ground. He has no chance to survive. I don't care if it's CJ Stroud. I don't care if it was Tom Bleep and Brady back there. With that offensive line that I thought was maybe better, and that's why I overestimated Carolina this year, there is no chance to succeed. I don't care who the coach is. I don't care what the play calling is. I don't care who the quarterback is.
So, look at what's happened with the Panthers since David Tepper has taken over as their owner. I think
Jimmy Haslam-esque.
It's like 6 head coaches in 3 years. How are you supposed to be a good team when you're constantly having turnover like that? Like, success doesn't happen instantaneously. Look at what the Rooneys have done in Pittsburgh. The Steelers have only had, what, like 6 head coaches in 100 years or something?
Free.
Okay, you get my point, though. They went from Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher to Mike Tomlin. That's why the Steelers are one of the most accomplished teams in NFL history. And I don't care what the record books say. I will continue to say it. The Pittsburgh Steelers are the only team in the NFL with 6 Super Bowls. I do not count all 6 Super Bowl championships for the New England Patriots. I don't care what the record books say. I will stick to my guns on that one.